Joining us now, live, Freedom Works CEO Adam Brandon. Adam, great to have you with us, man.
Hey, thanks very much. And you, what I called to talk about was my walk home from the speech last night, because I can't say I've been that scared in a long time. I got spit on. I got chased. If it wasn't for a hotel, a security guy who took who saw me coming down the road and opened the door and let me in, the Lions would have gotten to me. That was, and then I read in the Washington Post that it was a mostly peaceful demonstration.
Oh, it's a complete lie. I mean, they had all sorts of weapons and things. I was saying this earlier, Adam. You know, I'm 6'2", 265, right? You've met me. I'm a pretty big guy. Mm-hmm. So I wasn't really concerned, but there were other people that were petrified there last evening. Women that couldn't get to their hotel. I mean, it was a horrible. I had to walk 15 blocks. Tell me what your route was.
Well, I came out the side of the Treasury, and right. I parked down that way, walking towards the Capitol, and it was actually pretty terrifying, because as I left, all I could think about is, God bless the Secret Service. Mm-hmm. They were legitimately concerned for us and our safety. Mm-hmm. And the other thing that I just have to say is, I observed while there were security guards, it was almost like at the razor wire. They were at the fence, but it felt more like a military installation at that point. When they opened the door, well, first of all, the punishment they were taking from the protesters, the obscenities that were being hurled at the Secret Service agents who served Obama, would have served Clinton. They just served the White House. What they were what they were being yelled at was horrific. But then when I got out, there was a group of us who left, and that's when the spitting began. That's when the pushing began. And then, I kind of know my way around D.C., so I cut back on an alley, and next thing you know, I was alone by myself on a street, which I figured, okay, I got myself out of the mayhem, and then all of a sudden I hear some guys starting to run after me. And that's when I literally had to run, and I was about halfway down the block in this by a hotel by the JW Marriott, and one of the security guards just opened the door and let me in, and it was really terrifying.
Well, the thing is, when you're in D.C., of course, we were at the White House, so it wouldn't have mattered, but even when you try to get to your car, you can't carry. There's no guns allowed, so you're completely held. You realize when you get here and you're in that situation how important it is to have a weapon, because, you feel secure, whether it's concealed carry or not, or, you feel secure, but you're out here, you're sitting duck, because you have no protection. And what I was shocked with is they knew this was going on, and so you're right, the Secret Service were fantastic, but when you got 5 or 6 blocks out of there, and so they shut the streets down so there's no cars, right? And they do that for, I guess, to control the mob. But it backfired, because then there's nobody there and there's no cops there. And so there's marauding mobs walking around with bottles and bats, just walking around with no cops and no cars, and you're completely helpless.
I was so glad when I got home that there were some people, there was a journalist from Town Hall who had a phone and was recording what was happening out there on the streets, because I started texting some of my friends saying, you would not have believed it. It was, and then when I found the Washington Post saying it was a largely peaceable crowd, John, someone reconstructed a guillotine on the street, like a Robespierre, let's chop your head off guillotine. And I'm just thinking, if you would have done that during the Obama years, that would have been the front page of the New York Times. Mm-hmm. Yet, for some reason, that is considered peaceful protest. I mean, that right there, that is just about intimidation. And then I read in an article there was some group that came down that their whole point was to stop fascism. And I'm sitting there on my car ride home feeling like I cannot believe that is what Germany must have felt like in the 1930s, mm-hmm. when you had mobs rolling around just preying on people that got caught on their own. So, look, I wanted to talk about the president's speech in the event last night, but, I got to live the dystopian version of America just in those few blocks walking to my car, and the fact that the media is not picking up on this. And if that's the way D.C. is right now, I can only imagine what Portland is like today.
Well, not only the media not picking up on it, they're lying about it, because you said that, I haven't seen the post today, but mostly peaceful protesters. I mean, it was anything but peaceful. You walked out of that thing, and it was also shocking for a lot of people. I had some friends of mine there from out of town, from different states, and they're not accustomed to this. We live here, so we've been through the riots and the protests, and people are nasty, and you get spit on and all that. We kind of been through it, so you're a little expecting. But a lot of these people, they come to the White House. It's exciting to hear the president's speech. Now they're trying to get out, and they're like, what the hell is this, right? And they're fear for their lives. They fear for their safety.
And I think it was, and I just wonder, the D.C. police, you were correct. They did set up this perimeter, but I didn't get to see a D.C. police officer until I was several blocks away driving. And it was Mad Max.
They were the only DC police presence inside. Well, I'm going to call it inside the perimeter, which extended, by the way, for block. Again, I had to walk from whatever we were, 17th Street. I had to walk to 10th and K to get a ride. All right, that's where it finally opened up. So I had to go to 10th and K. That's a long walk. So they have a perimeter. You can't get in. No cars there, but then the only police presence were the cops in cars at the blocking entrance, but nobody on the street. So if you're caught walking inside that perimeter, there's nothing, and there's nothing open. Everything is shut down, boarded up, so you can't go in anywhere, and there's no cops, and you can't have a weapon, so you're stuck there. You're a sitting duck, caught inside there, and you can't get out. I mean, you can't get a ride in because nobody can go in. So it was a dangerous situation, right?
Yeah, and it's scary. That's Washington D.C. That's the White House. That is a peaceable political event, and then you come outside, and that's what you get into. And it just shows what is at stake this election. Those folks literally. They. Can you imagine what happens? When Trump wins re-election, what's going to happen? Oh, my. These folks were not there to try and educate or have a dialogue with anyone. No. It was about straight intimidation.
So where do we go from here, Brandon?
Brandon. I'm all fired up. I left that speech. I had a great time. The people that were there, I actually even noticed the president's spirit. He was fired up. When you saw his body language as he was moving around. I thought they did a very good job of the different speakers that came up that represented different portions of the Trump agenda. Some of those stories about the American aid worker who was killed by ISIS, and the Obama administration did nothing. I had tears in my eyes hearing our parents talk. Some of the other people who got up there to speak about their experience, how this administration's changed and improved their lives. I thought the campaign ads were writing themselves just watching the speeches last night.
How would you rate the president's acceptance speech last night? And by the way, we're with Adam Brandon. Adam is the CEO and president of Freedom Works. Adam, how would you rate his speech last night?
I thought he did an excellent job of opening up, kind of reviewing the past accomplishments. It's a very long and lengthy list, but I think with COVID, people have forgotten how much this administration actually got done. And it breaks my heart when I think back on how Paul Ryan let him down. When you had that majority, how little you were able to do that way. Almost every one of President Trump's accomplishments have come from White House action, not from legislative action. And that's really disappointing, but I was proud of what the president was able to accomplish. Then he moved from that to he started setting up things that he was going to do in the second term. And if I had a criticism, it was a little long for me because I'm used to only speaking for 5 or 10 minutes on stage. But look, that's it, because the rest of the material was so great. There was so much for him to talk about, and it also showed how much there is to do in the next term. And I think that the convention built up nicely. And you do have all I know is walking out of that convention, I lived what you saw. You saw Kamala Harris talking about those folks, those protesters outside were social justice warriors. The president called it for what it is. That was street violence. That, I think, is setting up a lot of the tone for this upcoming election.
Listen, before his speech last night, Trump was rising in every single survey and poll, Adam Brandon, that we have seen in battleground states. In Rasmussen, he's pulled into a tie with the president. Other polls not released because they don't like the results they got. They've been playing that game forever. It's got to fit a narrative, these fake polls. I think he's going to get a huge bounce out of his convention and the speech last night and start pulling ahead in a lot of these battleground states where he's surging now. And I talked to probably 10 leaders last night of the African-American community that were involved in the event last night or at the White House. Every one of them telling me that they thought that Trump was going to get up to somewhere around 15% of the black vote. That's inconceivable. But that's what everybody is telling me. Is that real?
It's that. Well, first of all, the crowd right there, I couldn't believe how many black leaders were there. I wish that, and then I think some CNN host came on and says they were just, that was just theater to kind of cover up the president's racism. Like, no, I was sitting and talking, and it was these folks genuinely were excited about what the president has done for this country and for the black community. So if you start thinking, okay, 15%, if that number is accurate, there are states and districts, like you mentioned, Virginia is going to tighten. If 15% of black Americans start supporting President Trump, states like Virginia are 100% in play.
Well, look, the numbers I'm saying, I mean, I'm delegation chairman for Virginia, so I'm involved in the campaign again here like I was in 2016 as chairman, and the gap's closing. I mean, we and I tell you the other thing, Adam, that is so different that we have that they don't have. We have a ground game. Across the country, the Trump campaign has trained over 2 million volunteers. These are people that actually went through training. In Virginia, we have thousands of people in the field knocking on doors every single night, all weekend. They don't have anybody. They have no ground game. They can't have one because it doesn't fit their fear of COVID-19 narrative. So they have to stay in. They can't go out. They can't knock on doors. They can't be seen in any type of a crowd because that doesn't fit their fear-mongering mantra. And so they have no ground game, the Dems. And we have a massive one. Don't you think that's going to make a difference, Adam?
I've had that conversation about, if you look at this polling data, the one thing that no pollster can really tell you for certain is what the turnout models are going to be this year. It is they're very screwy. You can't tell. But one thing I do know is people who love Trump, like my dad, he's 80 years old, high risk for COVID, whatever. If you told him he's got a 50% chance of dying going to the poll, he will still go to the poll on election. And I think that you're going to see that across the excitement from the Trump base. Those folks, our folks, they are going to turn out. But that's right. I think a lot of Democratic voters, they're so petrified right now, they're not going to want to leave their basements.
Let me ask you something. What type of an impact do you think this convention really had on people that might still be undecided or might be taking another look at voting for Trump? Do you think it really moved the needle, Adam?
What I think when you look at who's watching these conventions, I mean, often the majority of the people who are on your, in your base. But one thing that I've always pointed out to people is that it doesn't matter if it's in a presidential nomination or a Senate race. People care about debates in this country. When President Trump, one of the reasons that he won the Republican nomination is he cleaned up in the debate. One of the reasons that President Trump beat Hillary Clinton, he cleaned up in the debates. One of the reasons Barack Obama won, he beat Romney in the debates.
Right.
Romney won one debate, Obama won the rest.
Right.
So people are paying attention. And when you're such a closely divided country, if I'm watching these two conventions, one convention had this dark view of America as being this like systemically broken, fundamentally flawed place, and the other had a view that was our best days are ahead. We're and America is a great place. And I think that reminding people too the jobs that were created, the economy, just remembering back to where we were in February. If I'm sitting there in my suburban swing district, even if I don't like the president's tone on things, I do remember what that economy was. I do note that when you want to talk about actually advancing racial justice in the United States, the lowest unemployment for blacks and Hispanics in history probably does more than anything else you could do to improve people's quality of life. So I'm looking at that and I'm thinking, you know what? Even if I don't like how the president tweets, boy, do I like what he delivers for me.
Well, I think that's the bottom line. You're on the John Fredericks Radio Network. We're with Adam Brandon. Adam is the president and CEO of FreedomWorks. Go to freedomworks.com. Adam, Kamala Harris said last night on one of the talk shows, I think it was Stephen Colbert, she said that the riots are not going to stop ever and to beware. This was Kamala Harris. She's running for vice president, cheering on the mobs, cheering on the rioters. Again, like they just can't stop. What is wrong with these people?
You know, I don't think they had to walk through what I had to walk through. That's what I would hope that I'm glad there were some videos taken because so that people could see what those mobs are like. But I also think for her, this is just part of her ends to the means. This is, I hate to say it, this is a playbook out of some very dark periods in world history where street mobs intimidate. This is also why, John, that's so important that we protect the sanctity of our balloting process and allow people to vote in and go to the polls where it's you and your piece of paper and no one can intimidate you. This is one of the reasons that these same folks that are intimidating you on the street, they want to have this mail-in ballot process where they can intimidate you in your living room when you're starting to vote. So that's just part of their MO. That's how they operate.
Adam, tell me your organization, Freedom Works. How are you going to get? How are you involved in this campaign, and how are you going to make a difference?
Sure. Well, I actually represent 3 different organizations. Freedom Works Foundation. Neither of those organizations do anything political, but we have something called Freedom Works for America, and that's after we train our activist community. We then turn them loose so we can actually do our political work out of that entity. And our main contribution this year is texting. We are in the process of sending millions of activist-generated texts to, number one, make sure people have turned out. And then once we go through those lists, we're going to start to turn to those swing voters and start to try and engage with them on getting them to turn out.
You got to make a difference?
Oh, I think, I look at it. That's why I love texting so much is that within 15 minutes, almost 98% of every one of our texts is read. So it's such an instant way to connect with someone.
Yeah, it sure is. I read mine, even though I get a lot of them. Obviously, some of them are kind of spammy. But I get a text from the Trump campaign every 15 minutes asking me for money.
Well, my texts are not asking people for money. What we're trying to do is target voters to make sure that folks, like requested absentee ballots are actually turning them out and the rest. But I understand other people are using texting different ways.
Adam, we're out of time. Hey, thank you.